The next fly to show you is a dry fly. It's commonly known as Kitie's Imperial. Now I'm going to call it the Imperial because although this fly was popularised by Oliver Kite in the early 60s when he fished the Tivy between Tregaron and Lampeter, locals will tell you that the fly was well in use before Kite visited the area. I know the area quite well. I was there in the 60s. I first visited it in 1967, and so Oliver Kite didn't invent it. He may sort of give the impression that late Oliver Kite. He was a fantastic fisherman, and I don't like to sort of criticise. But if you speak to the locals, you get a slightly different story. Now, the main ingredient in the body is heron herl, the heron feather. You see this big feather here, heron primaries, and this is the tip of it, and that's in the body. You can't buy heron today, but you may pick one up on the riverbank, as I did, and especially in the summer, spring and summertime when they're molting. We have quite a few herons about, so they do come on the river and molt now and again. It's a simple pattern which has stood the test of time. It's a good imitation of the large dark olive. And they all say, now, Kite had a thorax, and how he made the thorax was doubling and redoubling the heron herl over the top. Now, the locals all say the same thing, that the fish, the trout, looking up from underneath, couldn't see the thorax on top, so it didn't do anything anyway. And the original thorax, I gather, talking to my friends in that area around Llangeitho, Bronant and Tregaron, tell me that the thorax should be of peacock herl. So this is it. So I'm going to call this the Imperial, not Kite's Imperial. Okay, so there's the fly, and you'll see me tie it now. I've already waxed the silk, and I'm going to start it off now. Nice, good little fly, good all-round fly. First, I'm using a purple silk, which is the original tie-in. First item to go in is a ginger tail hackle. So we get a big cock hackle like this. Pull some down, get them level, like that, roughly. Tear them off, and put them in like that, about there. Just like that. And I'll remove the surplus butts. Okay, now it's got a wire rib. Before I tie in the rib, I'll take a wind up under the tail. I think that usually improves it. So there's the tail. You can see that tail spread out a little. Wire rib, very fine gold wire rib. I don't particularly like wire on a dry fly as a rib because it just adds a bit of weight. But this is a size 14 hook, and it'll be okay. Everything is quite light. Now the hook, I say 14, it's the B440 Camasan. I'm not on commission with Camasan, by the way. Okay, now I'm going to take some of the heron herl. This is it. Lovely feather, but you know, you can use a substitute, and I think it'll be okay. Right, this is the feather. I've taken a cut, so I'm going to take a piece out like that. Get the tips sort of lined up to tie them in. And it goes in like this. herl makes a lovely body. I like it very much because it doesn't hold water. I'm just putting this down nice and firm. It doesn't hold water and it's very, very light. Okay, now this is simply winding it. You can do this with lots of different herls. Oliver Kite insisted it should be heron. I don't know if it really matters, but okay, I'm up to there now. I don't want to go too far because I've got to put the thorax on. Right, that's the body. Now I'm going to rib with the wire, and I'm going to go the opposite way because the wire is going to protect it. And if I went the same way as the wind, it would just tuck down in between and wouldn't really do the job. When you wind the opposite way, it can sometimes be a little bit difficult to tie it down, but it can be done just like that. Once you've got it, you'll be okay. Now then, with wire, if you can, agitate it to break it off. You can use an old pair of scissors if you want to. There, it's gone. When you do that, you don't get a little piece sticking up. Now this thorax, which I've spoken a lot about, peacock, you see it on there? I think it looks better. I think it makes a better thorax, and I'm told that it was on the original. Now, one strand of peacock herl, as you know, the tip is always a bit brittle, so take that out. And we'll tie this in by the tip, like this. Draw it back a bit to give a thorax. You all know I like a thorax anyway on a fly. And as I'm winding this thorax, my fingers are drawing down and bringing up the flue on it. Just like that. You see that okay? And now I tie it off. That's okay. Okay, the feather. It could be a ginger or a honey dun. And as the season goes on, you can make it a bit darker. I've got a light ginger here. I can't get honey dun. It's just too difficult to obtain now. Dun is a funny word in fly tying. You can get blue dun, you can get honey dun, you can get all sorts of duns. They all have one thing in common. That's a grey sort of centre to the feather. But it's so difficult to obtain these days that no one bothers with it. Right, I'm going to tie this feather in. Tie it in about there. And I'm going to do a figure of 8. Get that stalk back to tie it down. If that stalk is tied down like that, it makes everything more secure. And I bring my silk to the front. Now I have to remove that stalk. I can just about see it, but bear with me a second. See it there? That's the stalk out, and the hackle is in nice and firm. So my silk is at the front, so I wind the hackle. Don't need a hackle pliers because it's a big long hackle that I can handle quite well. As I say, this is a dry fly, And there we are. One more. Tie down the silk. Just secure the hackle till I get to it. Long hackle can cause problems sometimes, but I like to keep it because I can now use this for another fly. I think this is as close as you'll get to a honey dun. It's a honey hackle, and I'll just draw things back here a bit. Let's have a look. Will I need to put a half hitch? I don't think so. But I will. Some of the hackles underneath, when I do this half hitch, it exposes the head better for me to finish off. Just like that. You see that little, I can see the head of the fly. Now then, I'm just going to, 1 or 2 winds before I put on my usual whip finish. Okay, that's basically it. Fairly straightforward fly to tie. 1, 2, 3 winds are enough on a small dry fly. Needle in the loop and draw it up like that. I'll cut the silk. I just open to a gape up against the head, my side, and gently push, and I've not taken away any of the hackles. Right, now that's a pretty little fly. Real good general all-round fly. I think I've got one little hackle there, which I will remove. Not that it matters at all. Okay, that's it. That is the Imperial, commonly known as Kite's Imperial. Oliver Kite was a tremendous fisherman. I remember his series on television in the 60s called Kite's Country. And I agree with everything he says, apart from that he didn't invent the fly. It's only because I have some good friends who fish the Tivy, elderly guys who remember Oliver Kite and were there when he was there. I used to go to Lampeter, fill my car up with petrol, my old Cortina at Pontvine Garage, and then I would fish upstream up towards Tregaron. It was at the time when the red kite was just starting to come around. There were only 2 or 3 there at the time, and I used to stop and watch the red kites with my binoculars as well. Okay, this is a fly tie-in, so we won't talk about birds. That's it. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you picked up a few tips. I certainly enjoyed it, and I thank you for watching.